What's going on, guys? So today we have a very special guest, JT Sports. He's an NFL YouTuber and he's a big time Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So I'm bringing him on today to talk about the Cowboys Steelers game this weekend. Go ahead and introduce yourself, JT. Go ahead and shout out your YouTube, your social media, all that if you want.
What's up, everybody? It's JT Sports. Ryan, thanks for having me on the channel, man. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube. All you just gotta do is type in JT Sports. I should pop up. I also have a podcast. Same thing. Just type in JT Sports Podcast on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify. I pop up. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter at JT Sports.
Cool. So, anyways, man, I think on a normal year, we'd see a Steelers Cowboys matchup, old storied rivalry, and we'd have like Dak Prescott versus Ben Roethlisberger, and it'd be freaking awesome. But it's 2020, and 2020 is going to do 2020 things, man. And Dak's out for the year. We tried Andy Dalton. He got hurt. He was on the concussion protocol for a week. Then he comes back from that, and he's on the COVID-19 list now. So I don't really know what's going on with that. We tried to start Ben DiNucci last week. It didn't go well at all. I think he was kind of overwhelmed against the Eagles. So now it's between Cooper Rush and Garrett Gilbert. We really don't know what we're getting. So what are your thoughts heading into this game?
My thoughts is I'm ready for this is like a revenge game. So I remember a couple of years ago, I believe this was 2016. It was Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott's rookie season. Yep. And I don't know if you remember this game, but that was game of the year without a doubt. That game was wild. So I remember Pittsburgh threw a touchdown off a fake spike, basically. So they fake spiked it. I think they threw a touchdown to Antonio Brown. Pittsburgh was up. Then next thing you know, Dallas is driving down the field. It's like third and medium, I believe. Dallas hands it off to Ezekiel Elliott. He goes in, he rushes for like 50 or 40 yards and scores the game-winning touchdown for Dallas, man. Now it's just completely heartbroken. So hopefully Pittsburgh can get some revenge for a couple of years ago. I'm looking at Dallas right now. And if you're a Steelers fan, man, you have to be licking your chops right now. You have to be feeling pretty good. For Dallas, I don't really know too much about Cooper Rush. I know a little bit about Garrett Gilbert. He played as a backup quarterback for Cleveland. He's pretty solid. He reminds me a little bit of Case Keenum, has a pretty decent arm. He's pretty accurate to football, but he's never had really any meaningful snaps in a real regular season NFL game. So the inexperience is there, but I do think that Garrett Gilbert should be a little bit better than Cooper Rush, but who knows? It's 2020, so anything can happen. For all we know, Garrett Gilbert or Cooper Rush can come out here and dot up Pittsburgh for 400 yards. 2020, you don't know what can happen now.
Yeah, man, I remember Garrett Gilbert being pretty decent that year in the AAF too. I think it was for Orlando. It was Coach Steve Spurrier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Spurrier from the South Carolina Gamecocks, and he was coaching those guys up. It's a little different in the NFL. I will say with Cooper Rush, he was pretty good with us his first preseason, his rookie year, and then it kind of got a little worse each preseason after that. I think he was with us 3 years. Giants signed him so he could go join Jason Garrett again this offseason, and I guess it didn't work out, so they cut him off the practice squad. He's with us now, and he very well may be starting this Sunday, so I don't think we've announced a starter yet. Want to move into the trade deadline. That just passed, and the Cowboys didn't do too much, but first I want to talk about the Steelers. I think they traded for Avery Williamson, am I right?
Mm-hmm. From the New York Jets.
Yeah. So how do you feel about him? He's a linebacker, been in the league a little while, and I think y'all need a little depth at linebacker because you have some injuries.
Yeah, that was a great trade for us. A lot of Jets fans were happy for him, but they were kind of sad to see him go because he pretty much was the second best player on that defense behind Quinnen Williams, which Quinnen Williams has been balling out so far this year. And one thing about Avery Williamson is that he is really good in coverage, which is something that the Steelers need. He's also really fast as well because without Devin Bush being there, we had Spillane there, number 41 at linebacker. He had that first interception at Pitt 6 on Lamar Jackson. He's pretty good, but he's not that fast, and we need a guy who can really get out to the edges, which was a big reason why Baltimore gashed us in the run game, because after the first quarter, they made adjustments, and they were basically just doing whatever they wanted to do. They were pulling guards, they were pulling offensive linemen, and anytime you have a team that likes to pull offensive linemen, you always have to have a linebacker that's able to get out fast, that's able to avoid those pull blocks and things like that. And Spillane, he's pretty good. He's a pretty good tackler, but with Avery Williamson, we get speed, and we get a guy who's also very good in coverage. So he should be a really good part of our defense. Plus, he's on a cheap deal as well.
Yeah, man. So Quinnen Williams, speaking of him, that's another guy I wanted the Cowboys to try and go after. I kept reading on the internet, on Twitter especially, that they were asking for a second round pick. I don't know how true that is. I think they probably wanted a little more for him. He was like the number 2 pick last year. But another thing is Cowboys could use some of that too at linebacker, man. We got some athletic, some high caliber linebackers, but Jalen Smith's really been struggling in coverage, man. He's just not very good in coverage. And I think that's one place where the middle of the field, Steelers are going to be picking us apart.
Yeah. Don't you guys get Sean Lee back?
Yeah, he came back last week. So I'm assuming he's going to be on limited snaps. But man, he's just on old legs, man. But he's still probably our best linebacker most days.
And Leighton Vander Esch, he's still injured. Like, he was our best coverage linebacker, in my opinion. Like, when he was there, he really had that. He was really good in coverage. So, I mean, for Dallas, I'm still really shocked at how bad Jalen Smith has been this year. Like, in my opinion, he was one of the best up-and-coming linebackers in the NFL. And, I mean, for the Dallas Cowboys, it's just like this whole entire team has really been bad. When you look at the defense, we knew going in for Dallas that the secondary was going to be the biggest concern. And surprisingly enough, Trayvon Diggs, I think it's safe to say, have pretty much been your best defensive back, which is a big surprise because I wasn't really high on Trayvon Diggs, man. I was like, listen, man, Trayvon Diggs is the most overrated player in this draft class. Alabama, they didn't really play any teams that had any good wide receivers. And when they played LSU, he got torched. So I wasn't really all that high. So I'm really surprised that he's been as good as he has for Dallas. And for the offense, I mean, your best player, Ezekiel Elliott, is turning the football over. You look undisciplined. You look uncoached. And it's funny because a lot of us were thinking that Jason Garrett couldn't get no worse. It got worse. 2020, Mike McCarthy. I'm looking. I thought Dallas was going to go 10-6. I thought this was going to be a marquee matchup, right? Dallas is 2-6, Pittsburgh 7-0. And even as a Steelers fan, I never expected Pittsburgh to be this good. I thought Pittsburgh would just be good enough to win 2 more games than they did last year, make it to the playoffs. So, I mean, wow.
Yeah, man. I honestly thought 12-4. I think at the beginning of the season I said 12-4. I thought 10-6 was probably on like the low end. But I thought we were definitely going to be better than like an 8-win team. And now we're looking at like a 2-4 win team right now. So it's pretty crazy, man. Ezekiel Elliott, he's definitely not the same Zeke that we saw the year we beat y'all, was 2-3 years ago. But you know, he's shown some flashes here and there, but it's like we just can't get the run established, man. It's like teams are just stuffing the box. They see it coming. We don't have our great quarterback out there, so I really don't know what we're going to do about it. But one thing is, I definitely think that the players have regressed a little bit under Mike McCarthy than they have from Coach Garrett. Now, Trayvon Diggs is one guy who's stepped up big time all year. He's had to fill in a major role because we've had a lot of injuries with the defensive backs. And, you know, he's kind of been through some growing pains. But last week, he had 2 big picks against the Philadelphia Eagles, against Carson Wentz. So that was kind of exciting. Those were his first 2 turnovers of the season. Kind of wondering how that Steelers offense is looking. I mean, I know y'all are rolling right now. The only undefeated team left in the NFL had a really impressive win against the Ravens. I watched the end of that because I was tired of watching Dallas. And so, yeah, tell me about that offense.
So for the Steelers, my problem with the Steelers offense was that we're good, but we have times during games that we just get cold on offense. Like, for example, Kansas City. For Kansas City, they may have 1 or 2 bad possessions or 3 that don't go their way, but they'll never have a complete entire quarter when they just aren't able to get anything going. For Pittsburgh, I feel like in the third quarter, we get kind of cold, we get kind of sluggish, or not even just the third. It's like 1 quarter out of the game, we just get completely cold, we get completely sluggish, and we allow teams to still remain in the game. So for Pittsburgh, offensively, a lot of our damage is by what our wide receivers are able to do once they get the ball in their hands. Like on third down, we're the best team in third down because one thing that Steelers do that a lot of teams in the NFL don't do is that we don't try to throw past the sticks or at the sticks. Like, we throw it to our wide receivers and we try to see if they could make things happen, try to pick up the third down themselves with just the ball in their hands. So a lot of teams don't really have that kind of confidence in their wide receivers. And Juju Smith-Schuster hasn't had the best stats this year. He's in a contract year, but one thing about him is that he has been the safety blanket for Ben Roethlisberger, if you want to call him that, on third down, Juice Smith-Schuster has been the wide receiver for Pittsburgh that has been doing a lot of work on third down, keeping the chains moving, and he's been incredibly clutch. And that's been my biggest thing about Juice Smith-Schuster in the past. Like in clutch moments, Juju Smith-Schuster, sometimes he'll let the Steelers down. Like he had that fumble against the Saints a few years back. You know, he had that fumble last year against Baltimore, which ended up winning the game in overtime for Baltimore. So for Juju, I'm really impressed with how he stepped up, even though he hasn't had the best of stats. And one thing about Pittsburgh is that Pittsburgh is a legitimate balanced football team. And when I say balanced football team, I don't mean in terms of, oh, we rank top 15 passing football, we rank top 15 in the run game. Like, I mean, like completely being a balanced football team. If the pass game isn't going, we can run the ball effectively. And a lot of people still are criticizing Big Ben because I'm pretty sure you heard a lot of people going in had this preconceived notion that Big Ben was washed up, that he wasn't the same Big Ben. And even though he's having the most efficient season of his whole entire 15-16 career, people are still dissing him, saying that he can't throw the football downfield. Like last week, he threw the football downfield against Baltimore. It was several pass interference calls, and people still say he can't throw the football downfield. He's the only quarterback in the NFL so far that's thrown for multiple 80-plus yard touchdown passes, multiple touchdown passes for more than 20 yards. So nobody's still giving him the respect he deserves. And I look at a Steelers offense that's going against a Dallas Cowboys defense that really can't do anything. You can't stop the run. You just got rid of Dontari Poe, so your defensive line is really not looking good, which is really unlike Dallas, because one thing about the Dallas Cowboys is that they always have one of the best front sevens in the NFL, if not the best, at least a top 10 front seven. Your defensive line hasn't been good like it normally is, and your secondary is really bad. And we knew with the loss of Byron Jones, it was going to be a pretty big loss. Also, you lost Jeff Heath as well to the Raiders. So I think the Steelers could come in this game and pretty much dominate like how they did Cleveland.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I gotta admit, man, I was one of the ones going into this season looking at Ben Roethlisberger coming out of a big injury at his age. I thought he'd look a little washed up, and I thought that offense wouldn't be too high power. Really like James Conner and his story, but I didn't look at him as a legitimate number one running back in the NFL because he kind of disappointed a little last year. At the same time, he's kind of on pace for 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns this year. Roethlisberger's only thrown like 4 picks, so that they've managed to be very efficient.
And on the other side, one thing that I told people about the season is that a lot of people are like, oh, you don't have Antonio Brown, you don't have Le'Veon Bell. I said, listen, every player that has left Pittsburgh in the past, we haven't heard of them. Okay, the best player that I can remember that actually had a legitimate impact on the team was Emmanuel Sanders for a couple of years when he went to Denver with Peyton Manning. That's it. So Le'Veon Bell, we saw what happened when he left Pittsburgh. He went to the New York Jets, and I told everybody, I said, look, Le'Veon Bell was good because of the offensive line that Pittsburgh had. We had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And when Le'Veon Bell got injured, DeAngelo Williams was leading the NFL in rushing yards until he came back. So I said with James Conner, the thing with James Conner is that everybody says he's the most overrated running back in the NFL. I mean, I can kind of see it, but I still don't, because at the end of the day, the thing with James Conner is that the fact is that he doesn't have talent or anything like that. It's just that he's like a walking piece of glass. Anytime he gets touched, you have to cross your fingers that he doesn't get injured.
Yeah, so I mean, do you think he's the long-term answer? Is Benny Snell the guy? Or y'all going to draft somebody? What's up with that?
Well, one thing about the Steelers historically is that over the last couple of years, we have always had multiple backs on our team that are able to contribute. Like with Le'Veon Bell, we had DeAngelo Williams when we picked him up in free agency from Carolina. Even back then, we had Rashard Mendenhall. I forgot the other couple ones, man. I can't think of the other ones, man. It's so far back, but we got guys like Rashard Mendenhall, even Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell didn't start his rookie season. He was in a little bit of a halfback rotation. So for Pittsburgh, I think James Conner, I think he is a long-term solution because I just don't really see him leaving Pittsburgh, and he's in a contract year. I just think that he'll take less to stay in Pittsburgh because he was born and raised in the city, played high school ball, went to college at Pitt. So I don't really see him leaving Pittsburgh. I don't think we're going to cheap shot him anything like that or be messed up or something like that. I think we'll give him a pretty reasonable deal. But you got Benny Snell. Benny Snell is the more physical back than James Conner. James Conner is pretty physical. What James Conner is, he's the jack of all trades. He can catch, he can run the ball pretty well. Benny Snell is more of a power runner. You hand it, he goes north and south. As a Cowboy fan, you remember DeMarco Murray. That's who he reminds me a little bit of. He has a little bit of that one cut ability now that he lost weight. And you have the rookie Anthony McFarland, which is more of the big playback, even though he hasn't really had a lot of big plays because he hasn't had a lot of playing time this year. But when he was in, he's been pretty productive. And the offensive line for Pittsburgh has been pretty well, despite the injuries that we had. Like, our backups are playing incredibly well. So,
yeah, I noticed the offensive line graded really well on PFF. Now, moving on to the defense a little more. I just want to point out, man, TJ Watt's a guy I really wanted in Dallas. We passed on him. I think it was a mistake. He wasn't a scheme fit, but obviously he's turned into that dude. And y'all got guys all over that defensive line. Tyson Alualu's playing well. Tuitt, Hayward, I mean, all those guys, man. And also Minkah Fitzpatrick, y'all went out and got him. Wish the Cowboys would do something like that, but it ain't going to happen this year. But tell me about that defensive line in Pittsburgh.
Man, the defensive line, this is the best defensive line in the NFL. You got Bud Dupree, who's on a contract year. A lot of people were skeptical about Bud Dupree. A lot of Steelers fans were, because until last season, he was a bust pretty much. So he has a 10-sack season. We franchise tagged him, which was a good decision because we want to see if he could keep up that level of play. Well, obviously he has, so obviously he's going to get paid. We're going to have to rework some contracts around. Big Ben's going to have to take hopefully he can take a little bit of a pay cut to bring back Bud Dupree. You got Stephon Tuitt, who had the season-ending injury last year. He looks really good. He looks like he's also could be an all-pro. We already know about Cam Hayward, even though Cam Hayward got banged up against Baltimore. We don't know if we're going to see him in this game against Dallas, which it really isn't a reason for him to play in this game because, we should be able to handle Dallas without him. So you got Tyson Alualu, who's been a pretty good rotational piece. And we already know about TJ Watt. He should have won Defensive Player of the Year last year, but the NFL only has to give those awards to teams that make it to the playoffs. No reason Stephon Gilmore should have won Defensive Player of the Year over TJ Watt. So TJ Watt, he's looking to get paid as well. And it looks like going into this game, if you're a Cowboys fan, normally you have one of the best offensive lines, to not the best offensive line in the NFL. Hasn't worked out like that. And I think the biggest reason for that is because Travis Frederick retired in the offseason. I told Dallas Cowboy fans, I said, look, every great offensive line in the NFL always has an elite center because the center is the quarterback of the offensive line. If you don't have that elite center, the majority of the time, at best, you may have an average to below average offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of it. Losing Tyron Smith for the year sucks. Losing both of your tackles for the year sucks. I think we thought because we did go a year with Travis Frederick hurt that we could learn with Joe Looney and improvise, but man, it just hasn't gone well. Now, I just got a couple more questions for you before you go. First off, one of the big reasons why so excited to bring you on this episode is because, man, you come on FTFN every week, and sometimes you talk about your Steelers, sometimes you talk about other teams, and all you do is spit facts, man. I love your NFL and your knowledge in sports in general.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So again, thanks for coming on. And now you got to tell me, man, how do you fix this Cowboys team? Is it coaching? Is it players, personnel? Fix the team for me. You got one off season. What all do you do?
So here's what I do. How long do I have?
You got as much time as you need. I would say within a year.
Okay, so here's what I would do. So first thing I would do is I would pay Dak. Okay. Now, the reason why I will pay Dak, despite what people want to say, a lot of people had a narrative that Andy Dalton was going to be able to come in here and do what Dak Prescott was able to do, because Dak Prescott, before the season, the narrative with him was that he was a quarterback who needed help to win. And Dallas could win without him with Andy Dalton. Well, we've seen what the Cowboys look like without Dak Prescott. Pay Dak, bring Dak back. Okay. Next thing, if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not wasting no more picks on drafting positions that I already have depth on, like the CeeDee Lamb pick. No more of those. Dallas needs to go back to drafting offensive linemen. So if I'm Dallas, I am going to draft offensive linemen in the next upcoming year's NFL draft. I'm going to work on improving the trenches because that's something that Dallas always used to do in the draft so well. They were always drafting defensive linemen. They were always drafting offensive linemen. It didn't matter if they already had great offensive linemen or great defensive linemen. Like, it's always good to have that depth because at the end of the day, football is a game that's won and lost in the trenches. You don't win up front, you're going to lose. So look at Pittsburgh, for example. Have one of the best offensive lines and defensive lines that are dominating right now. So for Dallas, I'm getting back to investing heavily in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Next thing I got to do is I got to try to see if I can also find me another cornerback. Now, I don't really know how Dallas cap situation is looking like. For me personally, I would trade Amari Cooper. Like, initially, Amari, I understand why Dallas decided to pay Amari Cooper. We know Jason. We know how Jerry Jones likes to take care of his guys. That's why a lot of people in free agency love going to Dallas. Not just because Dallas is a great city and all, but because the Dallas Cowboys one of the few franchises in the NFL, like, they actually show respect to players. And being cool for a couple of former NFL players, how players treat their veterans matters the most. And Jerry Jones is known as a guy who always takes care of his guys no matter the most. So for Dallas, you need to trade Amari Cooper, trade into a team that were more than willing to be ready to take on that contract. Like Baltimore, I think Baltimore would take him. Maybe Green Bay would take him. And plus, I don't really think Amari Cooper deserves that kind of money because, again, some of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, he kind of goes ghost. Plus, it's really no reason to keep him because you have CeeDee Lamb, you got Michael Gallup, you got Cedric Wilson. I really like him a lot. So you got 3 young wide receivers pretty much all on rookie deals. Michael Gallup made the man a contract in like a year or two, but it should be pretty reasonable. So get rid of him. You should free up some cap space then. Then use that cap space. Try to get you some cornerbacks in free agency. And that's how we'll build Dallas from a roster standpoint. From a roster standpoint, I think Dallas has one of the better rosters in the NFL. I said before the season began, Dallas had a top 10 roster. Now that your roster is taken care of, you have to be able to make sure that you get a coach that actually knows what he's doing. So get rid of Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy doesn't need to be coaching the NFL no longer. Aaron Rodgers was right. Dude doesn't know what he's doing. He's out of touch. I still want to keep Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. I don't know about you, but I like Kellen Moore a lot. I don't really feel like Kellen Moore is all that much of the issue. And if I'm being honest, if I was Jerry Jones, I would fire Mike McCarthy and promote Kellen Moore to be the interim head coach for the rest of the season. So if you're Dallas, if you want to just go ahead and fire the whole entire coaching staff, go ahead and do that. So who would I bring in? So pretty much the only 2 coaches I could see Dallas going after and really having a good chance to get in is Eric Bieniemy and maybe Robert Saleh from San Francisco. I think Robert Saleh from San Francisco will be a good fit there. I know San Francisco has been down, but one thing about Robert Saleh is that he pays attention to the nuances of the game. Now, if you want to try to get a flashy pick, maybe Jason Garrett can go back to Oklahoma, maybe try to re-recruit Lincoln Riley again. Don't really know if he'll still be all that turned on because he turned down the job last year. He does have a pretty good program. Why would anybody want to leave that? Maybe you try to get Jim Harbaugh from Michigan. It looks like Michigan fans don't want him anyway. Bring him to Dallas. He should be able to come in and rebuild that team. So, I mean, in terms of coaching hires, I don't really think it's going to be hard for Dallas to find the right head coach. I really feel like Dallas, to be honest, never should have hired Mike McCarthy. I wanted Dallas to hire Matt Rule, which I thought was a big loss because isn't Baylor located in Texas?
Yep.
Yeah, I felt like that was a big loss choosing Mike McCarthy over Matt Rule. Hell, I felt like they should have went after Eric Bieniemy. I felt like Eric Bieniemy would have been a good hire. Marvin Lewis, I don't think Marvin Lewis would have been a bad hire. I don't think he would have been a great hire. Like, at least the thing with Marvin Lewis is that Marvin Lewis can build your team up. He can get you to the playoffs. You just can't really win things with Marvin Lewis there. But maybe Marvin Lewis need a fresh start because that was the narrative about Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy was in that Marvin Lewis chair when he was the head coach of Tampa Bay. So sometimes the coach just needs a fresh start. So for Dallas, Mike McCarthy, he's done. He doesn't have the locker room. We already saw that. The players it was like an article that came out on Bleacher Report a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it, but players were calling out coaches behind his back. Mark McCarthy didn't like that. He addressed in the press conference. He said the players should address everything in a manly manner. So if you have a problem, address like a man. Like that just shows you like the players don't have respect for you. If they're talking behind your back, they don't want to bring it to your attention. You don't have their respect. Bill Belichick, players don't even question here. You'll never hear any Patriots players questioning what Bill Belichick is doing. Like it was the center for New England, right? He was asked about the Patriots and what they're doing. He said, I don't think the Patriots are a bad team. Like, you'll never, ever have a Patriots player question Bill Belichick. So Mark McCarthy doesn't have to respect the locker room, bringing another guy. Heck, I wouldn't mind if they promoted Kellen Moore as the head coach. I wouldn't be mad at that because the players like Kellen Moore. I never seen any articles come out about Kellen Moore. I never seen any Dallas Cowboy fans criticize Kellen Moore. Like, Kellen Moore has pretty much been the bright spot of the Dallas Cowboys coaching staff. So, and in all honesty, if you can't get a coach that wants to go there, I will bring up Kellen Moore. So that's how I would rebuild Dallas. And one thing is that Jerry Jones needs to give up control. Like, I feel like Jerry Jones brings in guys that he knows that he can kind of whisper things in their ear. But maybe he does need to be able to whisper things in the air because it doesn't look like Mark McCarthy has any idea what he's doing. So
true.
I think that you need to bring in a coach that's respected, that can command the respect of the locker room right away, and somebody who can rebuild. Well, not even rebuild, because Dallas has a roster to win right now. So you just need a right head coach to come in and get the job done. That's how we rebuild Dallas.
Yeah, man, I agree with you on a lot of stuff there. First thing being in the trenches, I mean, that's where we're definitely lacking right now on both sides. Offensive line can't hold up. Even when the defense looked at their best, and probably the best game we played in 2 years defensively against the Eagles, we only gave up 2 touchdowns on defense. We got 4 turnovers. Carson Wentz kind of struggled all day. But even in that game, defensive tackle was a major issue, and the Eagles were kind of running the ball at will. I think Boston Scott had like 60 yards in the second quarter, on like 7 carries. So the thing about Kellen Moore is, with the offense struggling so much, I think a lot of fans are down on him. But man, like the game against the Eagles, he kind of coached them like the Harlem Globetrotters. Like, we were doing some crazy stuff, wildcat, trick plays, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think you have to. Because quarterback was so bad in the offensive line, and I think we had to just try and make something happen. So I actually like that. But so those are some good things. I like the coaching suggestions for sure. Matt Rule would have been a great hire. I always said he was going to be a star for the Panthers, and I think he's already starting to coach them up really well. Now, only other thing I got for you is I'm going to need a prediction on Sunday's game, how you think it's going to go, and if I get a final score. Yeah.
I think Pittsburgh wins 35-10.
Okay, yeah, I think you're very close on that. I'm going to say, I'm going to say 38-14. I think
Dallas scores, I think it's off of busted coverage.
Yeah, I'm expecting something like that, and then maybe one rushing touchdown with Zeke. I think we're going to put together one good drive, maybe to like start off the game or something.
Come on, open it all. Get everybody on Twitter going crazy. Next thing you know, get brought back to reality.
Zeke will be jumping in the Salvation Army thing, doing the and then we'll let him score like 20 something unanswered. But man, thanks again for coming on. If you want to shout out again your social media and all that so everybody can follow you.
Yeah, Ryan, thank you for having me on, man. I had a good time. I was watching football. I'm about to change this game. It's Akron versus Western Michigan. It's not even a game no more. Yeah. You guys can follow me on Instagram, Twitter at JT_Sports_. You also can subscribe to my YouTube channel, JT Sports. I have a podcast as well. Every video that I upload on my channel is in podcast format as well, audio, so you guys can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Just type in the JT Sports Podcast and it'll pop up.
Cool, guys. Definitely go and check out JT Sports. He's with Fan to Fan Network like I am, and that's going to do it for today. We're out. Peace.